don't fake it till you make it. You are allowed to say, let me get back to you.
Right.
When you try to sort of finagle around, and it's comes from a place of confidence when you know what you do know.
Right.
Know what you know,
right.
And what you don't know, find out.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, bringing clarity to business, entrepreneurship, and life. Thank you so much again, guys, for joining us today. I have an incredible guest I can't wait to introduce you to. But before I do that, don't forget to rate us on the podcast app. Leave us a little review if you can. And of course, if you're watching this on your phone or listening on your phone, take a little screenshot, throw it up on Instagram or Facebook or something, and tag me. Let me know what you think, and let me know what kind of takeaways you're able to get from this interview today. And I know there are going to be some amazing takeaways because my wonderful guest today is Lesley Ann Brown, CEO of the Whiskey Wisemen Society, and just super friendly, lovely person. That should be part of your title, maybe.
I would love that
after the CEO.
You could actually if you can just say that every time I go and get introduced somewhere. I feel like I should be running in with a champion belt.
I could be your hype man. I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you so much for doing this. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely.
So I like to just start off because most of our guests are going to be quite new to our audience. I'd love to kind of learn a little bit about your backstory, where you grew up, where you went to school, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm actually from Toronto. Please don't
hold that against
please don't hold it against me, and I won't hold against the fact that you are a Canucks fan, most likely. But
I am.
I grew up in a place called Oakville, Ontario. Oh, yeah. So it is just outside of Toronto. Mm-hmm. I grew up there from when I can first remember until I went to university.
Gotcha.
So I participated in a few things growing up, always trying to be multifaceted. I was a pretty excitable child, as I am as an adult as well.
Still, right?
So, started my competitive sailing when I was in high school, started competitive dancing as well. Wow. And then decided that I wanted to go to university. Well, I was told by my Jamaican and Antiguan father that was the only option that I really had, but I felt very, championed by the fact that I made the decision.
Yep.
So I went and attended Ryerson University for International Relations and Marketing.
Great.
I continued my sailing life throughout the whole thing. So I taught sailing. I ran my sailing school. That was my first sort of big girl job, if you will. And so I did that while working at the Second City, which is a comedy club in downtown Toronto as well. So
a lot on the go.
A lot on the go, that as well as university. Once again, kind of going along with my personality.
Yeah.
I loved every minute of it. Leaving international relations and marketing, I was given the opportunity to work for the Girls 20 Summit, which is an international nonprofit organization that hosts a summit for young women between the ages of 18 to 20. They pick one delegate from each G20 country and then fly them to the G20 host country.
You were the Canadian representative.
I was not. I was a little bit older. I was a little bit older. That was my first job.
Oh, that was your first job. Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay.
So I reported to the CEO, Farah Mohammed, who's now the CEO of the Malala Fund.
Oh, wow.
And so got to learn a lot firsthand, both very exciting and both very scary at the same time. Yeah. But definitely started to pick up trends where I really liked creating the systems, creating the overarching themes of what the organization or the company was going to be doing, really sort of getting my hands dirty. And so I did that for about a year, and then I decided that I'd like to move to Vancouver. Toronto is very cold. I don't know if we've ever been to a winter in Toronto, but
I did recently, actually, and it's cold.
Yeah, polar vortex, negative 55 degrees.
I think I got lucky. I was on a warm day. It was like minus 10.
No. And you know what? I was like, I race sailboats competitively. I love to rock climb. What am I doing in the cold pits of Toronto? So
I came to the right place.
Well, I packed 2 suitcases, and 2 months later I landed without a job with a 1 year lease on my apartment. And it was just like, I'm going to trust my skills and just jump in there and see what I can get done. So
that's amazing.
Fast forward, I worked a little bit in brand management within a retail company. I worked for a finance company. I worked in private equity until I left my day, quote unquote, day job to become the CEO of the Whiskey Wisemen.
Wow. All right. There's a lot in there. I want to try to unpack some of that because I think there's some incredible. So the first thing that blew me away that I think is that we really got to focus on is the sailing thing, because that's like so crazy to me. And out here, of course, there's probably more people who are into sailing than maybe out east, but I don't, actually, you would know better than me, but I just don't really know anybody who does that. But there's so much in there. Just like in any endeavor, it's a sport, right? We call it a sport, of course. It requires a lot of...
it's an Olympic sport.
It's an Olympic sport. All right. So in a lot of sports, especially at competitive level, there's a lot of things that you learn there that can apply to life outside of that sport.
Absolutely.
So tell me a bit about how you got into sailing, and then tell me like how that's helped you throughout life in general.
I would say to any parents that are listening to this podcast, there is great power in what your kids' friends are doing and how much that influences what your child is going to want to do. Gotcha. So at the time when I was in grade, I don't even know, grades, probably younger than grade 6, my best friend at the time was a sailor and did sailing, and she loved it, and so all of a sudden I was like, well, this is obviously what I want to do all the time. This is where my best friend is. So I tried it, and I was terrified. I sat at the very front of the boat and pretty much just hugged the mast and just sat there and just looked at my instructors like, I'm not moving from here. This is the safety position, correct?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so
that's pretty much, I would be there today.
You know, exactly right. I take newbies out every now and again, and that's definitely a nice secure feeling, but in reality, definitely not the most secure spot.
Oh, I got you. Good to know.
Either way, I was terrified of this. I told my parents that I do not want to do this. I want absolutely nothing to do with it. And my mom said to me, like the true Jamaican woman she is, she said, one of these days, this is going to pay for your education. And so genius. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to be driven, because I lived at the time in the suburbs. I want to be driven into downtown Toronto, and I want to learn and go to the city, because my dad worked in downtown.
I got you.
So my mom said, okay, fine. You find a sailing school on the way to your dad's work. We'll drop you off and go. And when I changed schools, I fell absolutely in love with sailing, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's so amazing. Well, I know there's some stories that you've shared and you do share when you speak and that kind of thing about how sailing and certain experiences and that have translated.
Absolutely.
So I'd love for you to share one of those if you can, whatever story kind of is off the top of your head that really, really still kind of stands out to you.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll tell the story that you would have heard when I was doing my speaking engagement. It's a story that stuck out to me because I think it has applied to no matter where I've gone, every single business, personal, it doesn't matter what it is. It's lessons that I've learned. And I tell the story of the first time I ever went racing in my entire life. So I have a very elaborate way of telling it in the speech, but maybe I'll casualize it and make it a little better for our podcast.
I don't mind hyperboles and emphasis
and the waves and the wind.
People are watching, you know, as well, right? That's awesome.
So what happened the first time I was racing my sailboat, it was me and my skipper at the time.
Yeah.
We had been training and got really excited, and we were in Hamilton, Ontario, and we were going out for our first race. And so we get out there, our coach is there coaching us on, life's amazing. All of our boats line up on the start line, and everybody goes. And we're, obviously scared. This is the first time we've never done anything like this before. And we're like sailing, and we're sailing really well. And at one point, we are in third place, and we're just like, what is happening? And we're looking over, and then just like what can happen in life sometimes, you look ahead, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's in front of me is not what we've prepared for. So what's in front of me, there's different kinds of winds, different kinds of waves. It's different. It's not what we prepared for. So we watched 2 boats in front of us go round the mark, and then in the new wind, flip over their boat.
Okay.
And so
Basically, my worst fear. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You don't want to be at the mast at this point. I'm telling you that way.
Right.
So we're here, and we're, I think we were probably racing age 14.
Okay.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, we're just not going to put up our spinnaker because that's what's making people tip over. Your spinnaker is this beautiful giant sail in the front of your boat that makes you just shoot off on certain angles of the wind.
Gotcha.
So we decided not to put it up. We're going to stay in the safe zone. We're going to stay with what we prepared for. We round the mark. We didn't end up winning the race, but, we came in third or fourth or something. So for us, our first ever race, this is amazing.
Right.
14 years old. Like, we're cheering, high-fiving. Our coach comes by on his powerboat and, gives us a high five. And he's like, okay, so why didn't you pop shoot? And we're like, no way. That's not how life works, right?
Yeah.
Like, we prepared for this. We stayed in this area and we finished the race. So why does it matter? He looks at us and he's like, if you ever don't pop shoot on a downwind, I'm going to write some terribly obscene things on the back of your boat so that as you're sailing away, everybody's going to be laughing at you. And we're just like, and he's like, no, it doesn't matter what's in front of you. You properly prepare, you set up your boat, and you go into the new stuff.
Yeah.
So we go into our second race. And now we're terrified.
Right.
Absolutely terrified. We're like, oh my gosh, please let the wind not be crazy. We go... We're off the finish line, or off the start line. Life's amazing. We're in first place.
All right.
Oh my goodness. And then the scariest part comes, right? And that's when the mark is there. And we're in first place, and now we're leading the charge. And we just have our coach's voice in the back of our head. And I won't tell you what the obscene, but it's not.
He gave you specifics.
He gave specifics.
That's awesome. Okay.
It's not what you want to hear.
Uh-huh.
And so we round the mark and we say, like, okay, we've got to do this. And we popped our chute, and oh my goodness, what a ride. We flew off the mark. We're sailing and going, and we can see the next, we're almost a course ahead of everybody else.
Wow.
And then what always happens in life, wind shifts. We weren't prepared for it. The boom, which is this giant piece of metal that goes across your boat, swings across the boat, smacks me in the forehead. I fall over. The boat falls over me. I'm now underwater with this boat essentially on top of me.
Okay, so no, that's my worst fear. So not the first thing.
Not right there. Yeah.
This one. Okay.
And in that moment, we're just thinking, why did we challenge the status quo? Why didn't we just leave it, not put up this sail and just let things happen? And so we put the boat back up, and we're like, do we want to finish the race, or do we want to? So we putt along and finish our race. And our coach comes in, he's like, I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you, because the next time you're going to do it, you're going to be that much better. You're going to be that much stronger. And it's stuck in my mind as something that challenging that status quo and staying in that comfort zone always. Staying in the comfort zone always feels great, right? Because it's comfy, and just kind of pushing the line, well, that feels great as well. But if you don't challenge that status quo, the next race isn't going to be any better. The next race isn't going to be any harder. The next race isn't going to take you that much further along in your skills and your ability and your confidence. And so for me, at a very young age, I learned that I need to challenge the status quo, and I've tried to do that and lead that throughout my entire career.
That's amazing. And be willing to take a knock on the head if you need to.
Yeah. And you know what? Every now and again, life's going to give you a knock in the head. Yeah. You just got to right that boat.
It's like that scene from Lion King, right? Where the monkey, Rafiki, is it? He hits him on the head. Anyway, Lion King just came out. Sorry. And also, okay, so I love that. So being willing to challenge that, push past your limits, mental limits, or whatever limits they might be, and then willing to take the hit that comes with it, because overall you're going to grow beyond that. That's amazing. And that's the part that, like, when I heard it the first time, I was like, this is so applicable to everybody in every aspect. So then you moved to Vancouver, and eventually you found yourself, I want to really talk, we've touched on the name a couple times, but people watching and listening might not understand what it's really about. Absolutely. Now you are the CEO of the Whiskey Wisemen Society. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Whiskey Wisemen, who they are, what they do?
I'll give you the Coles Notes version of the Whiskey Wisemen. It was launched and started here in the city of Vancouver. And very quickly, over our 7 years of existence, we've expanded into multiple markets across North America. So we do things, we do events, we do conferences, we do marketing and advertising for other brands online. We do e-commerce as well. We have a private membership club, one in which you are a part of.
Very grateful to
We do private tastings. We do everything that we do comes as a combination, as a way for us to raise money for charity, with the focus of the audience being young, affluent, excited individuals.
Yeah. And my experience there so far has been so incredible because one thing I kind of preach, I don't like to use that word necessarily, but I really like to encourage other people is connecting, right? I say networking, but I think sometimes when I say networking, it gives people that impression of I got to go to some event and hand out business cards for a couple hours and see if somebody calls. But this is the kind of networking I'm talking about, like really getting involved in groups of conscious, people who are really engaged.
Yeah.
And so you've done, and the group has done such a great job of that. Can you tell me, have you done anything to specifically nurture that? And can you tell me how you might feel that aspect, the networking aspect, is so important for the average person, business person, whoever trying to get out there?
So I first got involved with the Whiskey Wisemen because I created the private membership club.
Okay.
So after creating the private membership club, was invited onto the board of directors, and then since then stepped down off the board of directors to become CEO. The way that the private membership club was created was because, as I mentioned, when I moved from Toronto to Vancouver, I didn't know anybody. I knew my roommate that I would be moving in with. I met her 10 years ago. Have not spoken to her in the 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Did not remember how I first met this woman.
Wow.
But the power of social media.
Yeah.
We were on Facebook and it popped up that she had just moved to Vancouver.
Yeah.
I had just moved to Vancouver. Vancouver is very difficult when you're coming from Toronto to just find a place to live. So we were like, let's do it together. And it was us together that launched and created this private membership club, Clubwise. I bring this up because the reason why any of it started was because we hosted an event in our own apartment.
Oh, no way.
We invited individuals in our own apartment to come and do a whiskey tasting, and we cooked for everybody. We were building furniture and painting the walls right before because we had just moved here.
That's awesome.
And that's because for us, we didn't know a single person.
Yeah.
And
so who did you invite?
Random people. Okay. Like, think of the person you speak to at the coffee
That's
shop.
Awesome.
Think of the person that, and then we said this was the general gist. We want to get to know more, excited,
neighborhood
affluent,
type of stuff.
Invite other friends. There was about 15 ladies that had come.
Sweet.
And it was doing that, and then in partnership with starting to attend Whiskey Wiseman events that I have been able to build the network and the connection that I have with the city of Vancouver overall. Yeah. And it all for me started with creating an environment that was a little bit more casual, that was predicated on the group coming together and getting to know the individual first, and then the profession, or the individual first and then their needs, or the individual first and then. And what we found, I absolutely, there's a place for all types of networking. But with Whiskey Wiseman, what was so important when we were creating the private membership club, and since then growing other areas of our business, it was very important that the feel of the room is not that you lead with the business card. The feel of the room is that you lead with a general handshake, and you ask me about my day, my upbringing. How did you hear about the group? Not as much, what can I do for you? What can you do for me? Which, I understand the sales channel. I understand the sales funnel. I know that it's needed. But in building a real connection with people, in building businesses together, and building your practice, you're building it with people first and not their business card first. Yeah,
and I love that. And that 100% is the feeling that I got, because the smaller group meetings, what you call Bletchley Park, is so great, because it's like smaller version, like tighter knit. You get to know those people really well. I'm still in touch with both times I've attended both groups of those people. And one of the things that is asked is, like, after I introduce myself to everybody, then the host or the moderator will then ask, what can we do for you? You know, and it's such a cool idea that like, okay, these people are going to help me, you know, like I feel more connected in that sense. And so I love that. And I think that's something that I have encouraged others, and I continue to, is like, think about how you can help this in person in front of you first. And then they will feel, I mean, not in a bad way, but they'll feel somewhat indebted to you and want to help you back and want to be more connected with you. And that's something that I always get the feeling at these events. I think that's something that's important mentioning, is it's not just a bunch of dudes, well, not just dudes, ladies as well, but just a bunch of people getting together and sip scotch or whiskey. There's an overarching theme here, and that is giving back, right? So every year there's an organization that Whiskey Wiseman will donate proceeds to. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And could you say, would you be comfortable saying roughly, like on an annual basis, how much you donate?
So to date, we've donated $87,000.
Almost $100,000. That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch on, because I didn't touch on it yet, was you were awarded 30 under 30 recently. That's correct, right?
Yes.
So tell me about that experience. Can you say what it was? Was it your CEO position at Whiskey Wiseman that played a primary role?
Yeah.
And how that whole kind of thing went down and how you felt during that whole thing?
Yeah. I, on an everyday basis, will go and talk to the random person. You know, I will put myself out there all the time. I go on stage and I speak all the time. I am constantly in this interaction with people and introducing myself and blah, blah, blah. I was so nervous going through the application process of the BC Business Top 30 Under 30.
Yeah.
I was so nervous that I finished my application 2 days. By the time I heard about it, got all of my paperwork, I didn't realize that other people had nominated me. So that was, you know, a great feeling that it wasn't just my, but I submitted my application, I think, an hour before the deadline.
That's awesome.
Because I was so nervous. And for me, that award, what I was hoping to have is a mark of where do I stand?
Sure.
Whether I was going to receive it or not, going through that process of really presenting yourself, pitching yourself.
Yeah.
I pitch Whiskey Wiseman all the time.
Yeah, I know.
All day, every day. all day.
Yeah.
I can shoot off numbers. I can shoot off facts.
Awesome.
I can jazz it up if it needs to be a little bit more jazzy. I can, you know, make it very technical if we want to make it technical.
Awesome.
When you're now doing that for yourself, what a different experience. Sure. So I was interviewed, I think, in total 3 or 4 times from BC Business before the award was given. I had never been interviewed in a format where it was a judging interview. You were being judged on the words that you're saying.
Yeah.
Whereas most interviews, it's, you know, for the audience's benefit, or it's for, you're being judged on these words. And so a different experience.
Sure.
When I found out that I won, I think I had a bit of a panic attack the next day.
What?
I called my mom. My mom's like, why are you hyperventilating? And I'm like, my name is going to be all over the news. Like, I don't know. And it was such a cool experience. I had people reaching out, and for the entire year, I had people saying like, oh, I saw your article. Congratulations. And
so cool.
It was a very exposing, you know, experience to all of a sudden have everybody see your name and your picture and your, but one that I will cherish for a long time.
That's amazing.
Until I win top 40 under 40. So.
Oh, of course. Well, are you 30 now?
I am 30 now.
Okay.
So I've
Sorry,
aged out.
I asked your age on camera.
That's okay.
So it's okay. You won the award in perfect timing, because it was fairly recent, last couple of years, right? Yeah. And now you're totally eligible for the next one.
There you go.
So just to clarify, that's top 30 business professionals in Vancouver,
in BC,
right? In BC. I'm sorry.
BC.
In all of BC, even better. So that's pretty really incredible achievement. I wanted to interject that in the whole Whiskey Wiseman conversation, because I didn't want to forget. I forgot to bring it up in the beginning.
Not a problem.
But I want to go back to Whiskey Wiseman here for 1 sec, and that is the speaker series that you have, and you bring in some amazing people, and the one that kind of just off the top of my head, David Chilton from the Wealthy Barber, Dragon's Den. He was amazing. So I assume you meet these people personally as well, and you, of course, you hear them speak. Could you tell me like 1 or 2 things, like things that kind of have stuck in your mind, lessons that they've taught you, or they've shared that stuck with you, that you keep with you daily now? Doesn't have to be anything too super,
David Chilton was an interesting experience, just because he is such a large name, such a household name. What I admired about David Chilton was his ability to connect with whomever. So we had a person that was sort of targeted, like he just followed him around. And when David Chilton called me personally after the event happened.
That's awesome.
And he went through every person that he got to speak with and touch on behalf of our organization.
Wow.
And so that stuck out to me, because there's so many opportunities to kind of just, glaze over, be in your own zone. And he talked about it. And when he talked about the way that he operates his business, creating that real personal touch, I think I still have the voicemail saved. He's saved me this 3-minute long voicemail. Wow. And he's like, I appreciate this person because they did this, and this person because they did that. And he talked about how that has influenced the way that he does business as well. So that was something that, off the very top of my mind, something that David Chilton had said. I got to interact with probably 5 or 6 speakers in a year, I would say, on a personal note. I got to interact with Wayne Deans from Dean's Night, and he is a wealth manager who manages over $1 billion in assets.
Wow.
One of Canada's top wealth managers. And once again, definitely that personal touch that was felt. But he talked a lot about hard work and what it meant to do hard work.
Gotcha.
And he tells a story of when he was a cab driver growing up and moving from being a cab driver to getting into the industry. And at the time being told, for every 10 years, you should expect a $10,000 bonus. And he's like, imagine what you'll be at, when you're 80 years old. And for him, he was like, that's not enough for me.
That's absurd. Yeah.
That's not the goal for me. And so that was a story that really touched me. And he went on to talk about his interactions with, once again, his friends, the people around him, the connections that he had. And so that theme, I think I tend to pick up on a lot, provided that I'm in an industry and I'm in a position where it's really about relationships. So I tend to really pick up on that.
That makes sense. I mean, that is something that personally I think you're really great at as well. Those personal interactions and remembering and just making it about the person who's in front of you versus like, all right, I got to go do these other things. Can you shake a hand and move on? And that's something that I have heard about other very successful people. Bill Clinton comes to mind in particular, actually. I've heard stories about him remembering people's names and life story, like things about their life that he, somebody he met 4 or 5 years earlier, just in passing. Yeah. And he'd be like, "Oh, hey, how's your mom?" She, apparently he was amazing at that, which kind of makes sense if you've ever seen him kind of interact with people.
Absolutely.
So there's 2 questions I like to ask every guest before we wrap up.
Absolutely.
And so the first one is, imagine we could hop in a time machine and go back a few years.
Okay.
And I'm thinking to a point where maybe you were struggling or not so sure about what you were up to. And maybe I'm thinking like when you moved to Vancouver, you were saying you kind of moved here, you had a lease, but you didn't really know what you were going to do. What would you tell younger Lesley Ann at that age, at that moment, to kind of reassure her maybe?
In that moment, when I moved to Vancouver, I was extremely confident in the moment. It was probably the 2 months after that, I wasn't so sure. I remember my roommate and I trying to eat pizza in our new apartment and realizing all the tools that you need in order to eat an in-the-box pizza in the oven. You need to be able to put the pizza in and out. You need to be able to cut the pizza. You need to be able to, all those, you need a napkin. You know what I mean? Like, and
basic stuff.
All the basic stuff that it was so funny for us to try to go through this experience. And so if I were to go back and obviously not the moment when I'm trying to eat pizza, but the moment when I'm trying to build on where I'm trying to get to, and I was insecure in that moment, I would say to remember and lean on what you do know, and remember to not fake what you don't.
I got you. Especially
stepping into the role of CEO, there is a lot of things that I do not know. There's a lot that I did not know. And it was interesting now being put in that position, now being put in the position where you're in a new city, now being put in a position where you're the only person in charge of the organization. Well, you have a board, but you're the spearheader. And there's so many moments when you feel like you just want to make it up to get there.
Right.
You have that pressure.
They kind of fake it till you make it, sort of.
Don't fake it till you make it. You are allowed to say, let me get back to you.
Right.
When you try to sort of finagle around, and it's comes from a place of confidence when you know what you do know.
Right.
Know what you know.
Right.
And what you don't know, find out.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what I would remind myself in the encouraging moments of trying to.
I think that's really amazing advice, actually, especially social media tends to magnify a lot of these things or perpetuate a lot of, this feeling that you have to act like you know something or you are something that you're not because you're watching somebody else's highlight reel. So really important to stick, focus on the things that you know, go in on those, but then also be open to learning the other things and not pretending like you already know them. That's awesome.
I emphasize that for a few different reasons. Obviously what I've already said, but on top of that, through the position that I've now been, that I've now had, seeing on the other side, people try to fake it till you make it. And in all areas, at all levels, in all industries, it sounds like something that's, we talk about all the time, but in practice, I've had that experience and things would be a lot easier if we all really lived by that.
Yeah.
And so I would remind, not to say that one way or another, but I would remind myself to be very confident in the skills that I do have.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And then the second question, the last question is, of all of the things that you've done, you've achieved, you're still so young, but still up to this point, everything you've achieved, how much of it would you say is due to luck and how much would you say is due to hard work?
I do not consider myself a lucky person. I've faced adversity from a pretty young age. I am dyslexic. And so being dyslexic is very difficult when you're trying to learn as a child, and having parents that were, I was blessed with my parents to tell me that that's not an excuse. I am so excited and love being a Black female, but being in a group that is not necessarily not the most it can be tough. It can be tough. It's you don't always get an easy break, not to say that others do, but that's something that you do face. And so growing up and being a young Black female with dyslexia, and from the get-go you have people that want to push you in one area, and really having to stand up. And so I think I've taken that into every aspect of my business, is knowing that it's hard work. In terms of luck, you can't count on it. So
that's very true. That's very true. So I think I like that, and I think it makes so much sense. The story that you share about sailing, that helps you break out of that box that people keep trying to put you into, because it would be comfortable just being like, oh, this is where everybody else looks like me and does what I do. But instead of that, you put up the spinnaker, right, and you take the shot to the head, and it is a spinnaker, right? Like,
you got it right.
And you break out of that, and you go to, what, I'm not going to fit in this box. I'm going to be in a whole different world and create something else for yourself. That's amazing. So anything else you'd like to share? Do anything come to mind?
No, I don't. I don't think so. Okay. Whiskey Wiseman's always looking for cool people to hang out with.
Anybody who's listening and watching in Vancouver area, or actually, in other chapters, right? Look it up. If there's a chapter in your city, and are there some across Canada, in the U.S. as well, or not?
Yep. We I'll just check out our website.
Yep. which is
whiskeywisemen.com.
whiskeywiseman.com. And where can people find you, Lesley Ann Brown?
It's best to find me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, perfect.
Yes.
And they just search your name?
Search my name, and
Lesley
I should be the first person, Lesley Ann Brown.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you again so much for doing this. I'm so grateful. And I hope everybody out there who's listening and watching was able to take away some really useful information, some really useful points that you can put into your own lives and put into action right away. Thank you again for watching and listening to the 2020 podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, guys, give us a rating on the podcast app, leave us a little review, and take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. Tag me, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. I'm happy to take all the feedback I can get and make this better for every episode. Thanks again, guys. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
We'll make sure we get that little bit. Bye.